Welcome. Welcome everyone to the Partner Accelerator series. And my name is Vince Kearns. I'm a cyber risk specialist here at Trend Micro, specializing in the cyber insurance ecosystem. And we've got some support. If you would like to ask any questions during, we have the chat and Q&A open. So please feel free to ask any questions. Today's session is being recorded, so you'll be able to refer back to it. And if you desire, the slides will be made available as well. So welcome. We're going to talk about cyber insurance today. And whenever we talk about cyber insurance and channel partners in general, I like to go back to Simon Sinek. Why? Start with why. Why is this important to a channel seller? And I think we're going to be able to answer. So let's start with what is cyber insurance. Cyber insurance, I look at it as the final leg of risk mitigation for your customers. They may buy security solutions, they may put certain things in place, but at the end of the day, if they need to feel that comfort level of having that final leg of risk mitigation, a cyber insurance policy is where they look. Because if something bad really happens and they're out of business for a few days, cyber insurance can help defray the cost of getting back up and running and being able to stay in business. So that's if you're looking for more about what cyber insurance includes, we have several resources on the Trend Micro website. And we are going to. So the topics of today, why is it important? I can sum it up in one word: influence. This ecosystem has massive influence on your customers' buying behavior. I think back 12 years ago or so, when a customer would think about buying one solution over another, they went to their channel partner and you provided influence on what was good, understanding their infrastructure, what they need. Everybody was happy. It was a great situation. The customers, you were their trusted advisor. About 8 years ago, that shifted a little bit to the marketplaces, right? And whether a channel partner was involved, but that influence kind of shifted a little bit. And the thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of today is that influence has shifted a little further away in the form of brokers, insurance carriers, and incident response partners that influence your customers' buying behavior. And today we're going to talk about ways in which you can combat that. Right? And so a customer, their buying behavior, they will listen to a broker because the broker understands what the carrier is looking for when it comes to security requirements, and they will communicate that to your customer, and that buying behavior has been changed without your involvement. So hopefully today we'll come up with some ways in which you can combat that. It's also a way in which you can get deeper and wider into your accounts and become a trusted advisor just by asking a few questions, understanding their cyber risk strategy, and insurance can give you a really good picture into what they're focused on. So we're going to be able to talk about that. Then the rest of today, we're going to talk about the ecosystem, who they are, what is their role, what do they care about. And then really the expectations put on your customer, that influence I'm talking about. And if you are able to understand those expectations that are being put on your customer to get an insurance policy, it creates an opportunity for you to become their advisor and be able to provide those solutions for them to take care of their overall risk strategy. So, and then the last thing we're going to talk about is what happens when your customer experiences a breach, whether they have insurance or not. We're going to talk about that so you have a better understanding of how you can support your customers if they have an incident. But first, I'd like to talk about a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are today. 2019 and before. So cyber insurance has been around for about 12 years. Some say it's been around a little longer, but 2019 and before, your customers could fog a mirror, answer 3 questions, and they would get an insurance policy. And everybody was happy. Customers had their final leg of risk mitigation satisfied. The insurance companies were selling a bunch of insurance, and the brokers were selling it for them. Everybody was happy. Well, what happened in 2020 and up through 2022? The ransomware outbreaks just crushed the insurance industry. The claims went through the roof, and what we experienced is a detraction in the markets. Insurance companies started declining people, right, because of the losses. So what they did about it is start getting better at assessing risk before they write the policy. And the way in which they're doing that is asking questions better, but really the ongoing telemetry that's available now is what the customers are what the carriers are looking for, the underwriters in particular, and it's all around cybersecurity maturity. If your customer is able to communicate maturity to the underwriter, they're going to get the right policy for them. When I say the right policy, there's really two factors: the terms of it and the pricing. And so having the right policy is super important. You don't want to be overinsured. You don't want to be underinsured. And the insurance ecosystem is getting a lot better at that. How are they getting better? Like I said, asking better questions, preparedness, right? Making sure that they have an incident response plan. And I'm going to touch on that a couple times over the next few minutes as well. It's how can you help your customer prepare in case the house catches on fire? And now some insurers are actually going to the live telemetry and being able to, instead of, asking 75 or 150 questions in a questionnaire, yes, no, being able to attest and make sure they have MFA in place. Because when you fill out an application and you check you have MFA, and then that one box that doesn't have it, that's in a closet somewhere, if that's the cause of the breach, the insurance carrier is not going to cover that because MFA was not in the entire organization. That's actually been litigated, and it's why that bringing this up proactively with your customers will put you in the best position to help them and get that influence back that we've experienced in the cyber insurance ecosystem. So who is this ecosystem? It starts with the carriers, right? The carriers assume the risk. They're the ones, they accept the premium and they don't want to pay out claims. And if they pay out claims, they want them to be as small as possible. And so based on that evolution we just talked about, they're getting better at assessing risk. How do they do that? Asking better questions, but really getting to understand the maturity that they can show. And it's going to be around attack surface risk management, but some of these underwriters are not as technical as we are. And so they just look at EDR, yes or no. We know it's probably a little more than that, and I'll touch on that as well. So carriers, all they care about is accepting and paying out as little as possible. And when you look at some of the things that they've started requiring, MFA, backups, EDR, XDR, every one of these solutions that they're mandating will reduce a claim if made because EDR provides telemetry. MFA provides the ability to not or harder to hack into somebody's infrastructure. So every one of those mandates can lower their payouts, and that's what it's there for. Insurance brokers, that's the influence I'm talking about. They work their job just like a channel partner is to sell the insurance to the customer. Now, they are selling AIG or Chubb, Travelers, but they're the seller into it, and they're the ones talking to the customers that will let them know of the requirements that they need in order to get this policy with Chubb or this policy with Travelers. So they're the ones influencing your customer that to get this policy, they need these types of security controls in place. And I'm going to share those with you in just a second. Breach coaches and law firms. If this is a new term, don't feel bad because these entities are there to protect your customer. But in an insurance claim process, they are the decision maker. If a claim is made, they run the incident response. They're the ones that choose the incident response vendor to go and remediate your customer's breach. But they are the decision maker. And if your customer has a retainer and they make a claim, that retainer will probably not be held up unless it's already been pre-approved through the breach coach, broker, and carrier. So again, being proactive is so key, but just when you hear the term breach coach of a law firm, why they're involved, it's when a breach occurs, they are kind of consider them the quarterback, right? They're the decision maker and are there to help the customer and protect the customer. And then the last piece are the IR vendors. These are the companies that actually go out and do the remediation. The house is on fire. They get a call. They go out and they provide the incident response. They also have a heavy influence on the customers as well. Technically, they're not supposed to engage directly with the customer. That's up to the breach coach, but we know it happens. You have to. You're on site. You're taking care of the remediation. So you just can't discount the influence that those guys have on our customers as well. So this was a really quick way to go over this slide. I could probably talk to this slide for an hour, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, because the understanding of this ecosystem will help you get deeper and wider into your customers. And if I have time, I'm going to come up, I'll give you some other scenarios where these will come out. All right. So let's get into the meat of the presentation. Cyber insurance demand is growing. It is not going anywhere, team. And the reason for that is that certain industries are requiring it. Third parties are requiring of your customers. So if your customer does business with somebody, they may require them to get an insurance policy. So the demand is up and to the right. They expect it to grow, like 60% over between now and 2028. So just know that cyber insurance isn't going anywhere. And I believe understanding the cyber insurance strategy of your customer is just as important as understanding their infrastructure, what solutions they have in place. Because understanding their cyber insurance strategy will give you visibility into their cyber risk strategy, right? And how can you help them with the things they need in order to qualify for insurance, but also just to protect their environment, which you guys are great at. But understanding cyber insurance, I just can't say enough about how it can help you inside of an account. And I'm going to come up with some, give you some ways in which you can do that easily. So it kind of goes back to what are the underwriters looking for? And I can sum it up in really two statements. Cybersecurity maturity. If you show that, you're able to get the right policy and have the right things in place. And then that leads to attack surface risk management. Okay, so if you're able to know where your assets are, assess the risk of those assets, and then remediate, that is the maturity they're looking for. So I kind of struggled with which one is. It's actually both, right? And think about that. If you were to tell a carrier underwriter that we have attack surface risk management down to a T, we're continually looking for assets, we're continually assessing the risk of those assets, and then we're remediating, music to their ears. And I believe that the customer would be in a great place to ask for preferential pricing, preferential terms. But being able to communicate their attack surface risk management strategy is the key to being able to do that, and you can help them with that. Security control requirements that drive opportunity. This is where the carriers, remember, they want to collect money and not paying out, so they put requirements in place. Those requirements are a menu for a channel partner of what do you need in order to satisfy these insurance requirements, and if there is an incident that you're taking care of. And so what are those? EDR is what's out there, but I'm here to tell you today, EDR is not enough, and here's why. Telemetry. What's the difference between EPP that's been around for decades and EDR, XDR? It's telemetry. And the telemetry is what allows an incident response vendor to find patient zero faster and remediate the breach faster, making the claim lower, right? All the way back to the insurance carrier. And for a couple of 3 years, EDR was the mandate. You got to have endpoint detection and response. And as having almost 3 decades in security, I'm here to tell you that endpoint telemetry is important. Don't get me wrong. But by the time it's hit the endpoint, things are not going well. That's why the telemetry of email, network, identity, and cloud is so important. And so instead of just going with EDR, when I talk to carriers and brokers, I tell them our XDR strategy. They go, whoa, okay, I get it. And the market is moving there, right? MFAs, backups, and incident response plans. These are the other requirements that the carriers and brokers are requiring. Multi-factor authentication, I addressed earlier. Having a backup strategy, and the bad guys have really figured out that people are backing up. How can I go encrypt those as well? They're very good at it, and I think with some of the great backup vendors that y'all work with every day can help you with what that means. But just know that the bad guys are good at finding the backups, and you just got to have a really good backup strategy. And again, that's part of the maturity. That's why I had to keep that maturity over, on the description of what they're looking for. It's because of, having a good backup strategy is critical. And then incident response plan. Why is that highlighted in red? It is that, to me, feels like the easiest way for you to broach this with your customers, because a lot of people already have EDR, XDR. They probably have MFA. They may have a backup, but you can probably help them a little with the strategy. But we're finding that a lot of customers don't have an incident response plan, right? That if the house catches on fire, what am I going to do? And for a channel partner, when will you know that your customer is breached? The answer to that question will tell you how close you are to that customer and how much value you can provide during and after a breach. So that starts with an incident response plan. There are solutions out there. At Trend Micro, we have one if you need help with that. But having an incident response plan. Notice I didn't say retainer. Retainer can be an important tool, but having the plan of, the plans are very detailed these days of what they're going to do if they experience a breach. Okay. What happens when your customer has a breach? Okay. Actually, before I do that, I wanted to show you this menu. This is the top security controls and why you should care. And again, all the ones I've talked about up here are listed. But if you ask your customer just a simple question, do you have insurance? Yes. Okay. Well, what were the requirements? What were the controls that you had to implement in order to get that policy? If they don't know the answer to that question, then they probably don't have the right policy for them, because a quality policy is going to have these requirements around MFA, backups, EDR. And so understanding what they're being asked to implement can help you with the menu and what you can present to them to qualify for cyber insurance. If your customer doesn't have insurance, are they looking for it? And if they are looking for it, what requirements are they being asked to have in order to qualify for that insurance? Both of those answers. So if it's yes, you've got to weigh in. If the answer is no, but they're looking, you have a weigh in. If the answer is no and they're not looking, I think that may be the best opportunity, because they probably don't have a quality risk management strategy. And I'd just be really curious to see how you can help them be ready and prevent a breach from occurring, because those are the customers that I worry about the most. They're not interested in insurance, and there's fine. There's people out there that maybe self-insure or do have other ways of mitigating that risk. But for the most part, it has been commonplace as a part of a comprehensive risk management strategy is to have an insurance policy that can be that safety net. And understanding the terms of that, obviously, very important. So back up here, what happens when your customer has a breach? If they have, all right, first one is if they have insurance. If they have insurance, they know they have a number to call, and they're going to call that and make a claim. Once a claim is made, there's no takebacks. A claim is made, and they are going to assign a breach coach immediately. A lot of times this happens at 3:30 on Saturday morning. Breach coaches are ready, 3:30. And then the first thing they do is look at a panel. It's called a breach panel, that for that carrier, there have been 8, 10 pre-approved IR vendors that they choose from. So breach coach chooses an IR firm. The IR firm immediately engages with the customer to start the remediation. And a lot of that is around finding patient zero. How do we find patient zero and remediate it as fast as possible? So if your customer has a retainer, you need to find out before a breach if that company is going to be used for the IR. And the only way to do that is to ask the broker, the customer, asking the broker or the breach coach. But after a breach has happened and a claim has been made, all bets are off. And the process is breach coach, the IR vendor, and then a lot of times the customer has to back off. It's in the terms of their insurance policy that now the IR vendors there, they are there to remediate the breach in the shortest, most efficient way possible. After the breach, whether they have insurance or not, becomes an opportunity for you based on the closeness of your relationship with that customer, because the customer does not want this to happen again. They will do anything. Checkbooks open. They don't want it to happen again. But you've got to be empathetic. You can't just jump on them. Whoa, the breach that's occurred. Let me sell you all this stuff so it doesn't happen. You gotta approach it with empathy, and they're not all alike. Some customers will be welcome to an immediate yes. Let's get on this. Some want to take a little time. So I just encourage empathy and just hopefully you got a call early in the process and you already understand what's going on. But if you're not, that's where I would start bringing this up proactively so you can become that trusted advisor when a breach occurs. If your customer does not have insurance and they have a breach, that is where the first thing they're probably going to do is look at that IR retainer, incident response retainer, if they have it. Or they may call you. They may call their security vendor. They may have an IR company that you've never heard of that they know from a previous relationship. But there's no official breach coach involved. There's no breach panel. And the process can get a little unique in that there's some times where, actually a lot of times when there's no insurance, they just pay the ransom, right? I mean, or they do what it takes in order to get back up and running as fast as possible. And whereas a lot of in the insurance cases, there are ransoms paid. It's still, I can't get my thumb on when the ransom gets paid versus it doesn't. I don't think anybody can really, but when they don't have insurance, the process gets a little clunkier, and the closer you are to the situation, the better you can serve your customer and be that trusted advisor. All right, I'm going to pause here. Lonnie, do we have any questions from the group?
No, I haven't seen any yet. But Vince, one of the things that I wanted to highlight, which was a couple slides back, is we talked about those carriers and those brokers, and something that I just wanted to highlight to the audience, and this is, you may have heard this already from your customers, is that my broker carrier says that, Trend Micro, for example, isn't on their preferred security vendor list. We've talked to a number of a number of insurance carriers, and there are no mandates for cybersecurity vendors. So if you're hearing this from your customers, just know that you can instruct your customers that they can push back. Trend has a lot of valid reasons as to why XDR is better than EDR, for example. And if your customers need explanation on that to provide to carriers or to a broker, we're happy to sit on calls with you all if that should arise. But I just wanted to make that aware to you all that it does happen in the industry, but there are no mandates around security solution providers. That mandate only comes in when we're talking about those breach panels and anything that rolls in during an incident. Awesome.
Thank you. So we're here towards the end. I'm going to fill it unless there's any other questions. But the key takeaways today is the influence that this ecosystem, first of all, this ecosystem exists. Okay. Second, this ecosystem has massive influence on your customers' buying behavior. And how do you wrestle that back? It's jump right in, asking questions about cyber insurance and what their strategy is, why they have it, and it will lead to opportunity for you to get them the right security controls that a carrier implements on them. So would love any and all feedback. This is meant to help our partners bring up a really relevant topic. And when I say deeper and wider in the organization, it's because when you ask them a question, oh, I don't know that. Well, this person might. And after you have a couple of those questions, you will find yourself in the C-suite. This is absolutely a C-suite conversation that you can get into. If you desire to get into a C-suite of one of your customers, this is absolutely a fantastic way to get there. And we would love any feedback on that. All right. So, hey, thank you very much for your time today. I hope this was beneficial. Oh, I did have one more slide. Sorry. So I was going back. Attack surface risk management. This is what the carriers need to see. This is an example. If your customers are publicly traded, they are susceptible to regulation 106. Attack surface risk management is the way for them to take care of this. Why? It's because the CISO needs the ability to communicate risk both internally and externally. Remember, EDR is not enough. You've got to have multiple lines of telemetry in order to satisfy rules like 106. And really, overall, this is a shift from being reactive to proactive, which happens to be the subject of our next Accelerator series in a couple of weeks of that shift of reactive to proactive. And I hope all of y'all sign up and are able to join that seminar. So good stuff. And
hey, Vince.
well, hold on. So what you see here is a way to register for the next ones and some of the old predictions. There's my contact information. If you have any questions, would love to help with this. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this ecosystem and how it impacts our customer buying behavior and your customer buying behavior. All right.
Okay, so I do have a couple of questions. I've tried to answer them. So Lou, you asked a question about which insurance carriers Trend is on for the preferred IR list. We're not. And that's for a very specific reason. We are working on that. And truth be told, it's actually very hard to get on these preferred breach panels from an incident response perspective. They only update them every so often when they feel like they need to refresh. So what Trend is doing is we are looking at partnering with the other DFIR vendors out there. So for example, if you're familiar with Kroll or Arete or Kivu, working with organizations like that who are familiar with Trend technology, who already sit on those breach panels to kind of enable all of that. So the process to go through it is actually kind of rigorous, and relationships do matter. So yeah. With the scope of and capability of the Trend IR team, to sit on 150 breach panels just isn't doable for us. So that's why we're leaning on these other DFIR vendors who are out there who have larger teams and already sit on these panels, know how they work, have negotiated rates with them, et cetera. So I hope that answers your question. There was another question in the window that asked about Trend's solution for incident response. So I put that link in the chat. We've partnered with an organization called Net Diligence. So if you guys have not heard of that organization before, I suggest maybe looking them up. But they have a solution called Breach Plan Connect, and that's a customized, pre-written incident response plan that customers can use. That literally it walks them through every step of an incident response plan and allows them to fill it out so they have something ready to go. And the benefit of that particular solution is, should their systems get encrypted and they can't access their systems, it's accessible via a cell phone. So there's an app that they can download, and it makes it that much easier to be able to respond and get in contact with the people that you need to.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, we actually went over a little bit. thank you for your time. Again, this is recorded. You have access to the slides soon. And thank you for your time. Have a great day.